Let's stick with that theme before engaging the various political parties that we've lined up for you to give us their sense of expectation for Sona 2026. Let's take a listen to some of the promises that were made by President Cyril Ramaphosa during the 2025 State of the Nation address.
In many cities and towns across our country, roads are not maintained. Water and electricity supply is often disrupted. Refuse is not collected, and sewage runs in the streets. In part, this has happened because many municipalities lack the technical skills and resources required to meet our people's needs. Many municipalities have not reinvested the revenue they earn or collect from these services into the upkeep of infrastructure. Starting this year, we will work with our municipalities to establish professionally managed ring-fenced utilities for water city services to ensure that there is adequate investment and maintenance. This year, we will put in place the building blocks of a competitive electricity market. Over time, this will allow multiple electricity generation entities to emerge and to compete. We will mobilize private sector investment in our transmission network to connect more renewable energy to the grid. The Minister will tell us that we still need to install 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines. We therefore need to mobilize finance from a number of sources to enable this to happen. Mining was the bedrock on which our economy was built, and it continues to be a sunrise industry. We are on track to implement a new, modern and transparent mining rights system this year, which will unlock investment in exploration and production. We will invest in digital public infrastructure to give South Africans access to government services anytime, anywhere through a relaunched government gov.za platform.
So there was an excerpt there, excerpts of President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech, the State of the Nation address delivered last year. Let's take the conversation forward now. I'm joined by DA MP Jan De Villiers, EFF MP Veronica Mente, as well as the IFP's Chief Whip, Nhlanhla Hadebe. I've got to tell you that we did extend an invite to the ANC to join this conversation, as well as the MK party. But unfortunately, both parties were not available to be a part of the discussion. Nevertheless, let's continue. Jan, let me start with you. Good afternoon. I want to start with you because you are in the government, as part of the Government of National Unity. What is your own assessment of progress made in delivering on the promises of last year's State of the Nation address broadly within the three main priorities of driving inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty, and tackling the high cost of living, as well as building a capable, ethical, and developmental state? How did you and your government go in delivering on those promises in the past year?
Good afternoon, Tulas, to yourself and the viewers at home. It's very nice to be with you. Yes, important indeed. I think the DA believes that the true test of the GNU and of the government is if we can turbocharge the economy, bring unemployment down, and create better economic circumstances and opportunities for your viewers at home, for the people of South Africa. Much progress has been made, and I think a lot of stabilization in the economy has happened since the DA has joined the Government of National Unity. And I think some positive signs have been South Africa coming off the grey list, which is really important for foreign investment into South Africa. We've seen the rand strengthen, which is a sign of stability and more confidence in the South African economy. We've seen inflation coming down, which means the cost of living is getting a little easier, and that South Africans can finally start breathing again a little bit. And we've seen government debt stabilizing as well, which is really important, because at the moment the government is paying too much in debt. We need to bring down our debt so that we have more schools for basic services. And all of this has resulted in more investment in the South African economy. But there are much more to be done, and we are really looking forward to the president this year making strides, and the GNU making more strides towards bringing economic empowerment for all, re-looking black economic empowerment rules as it is at the moment, because BEE only serves a very small political elite, and it does not help the viewers at home, the voters, the citizens of South Africa. We need to look at the ports and the harbors. We're hoping to see more help going to our harbors so that our exporters can get our goods out, so that we don't lose business and that we can strengthen the economy that way. We are emboldened by the steps that have been taken in the public service. We are moving towards a public service which hopefully will be professional, merit-based and independent, and but much more needs to be done. We need to make sure that the people working for the state are not there based on political affiliation.
All right.
And very importantly, we need to look at how we're going to deal with this crime issue. And the DA keeps saying we need to devolve policing powers. So we really hope the president will talk about that as well.
Right. Let me get to Nhlanhla Hadebe before I get to the EFF's Veronica Mente. Also going the same vein, because you also are in the government, so you bet for that side before we hear from the opposition. By the way, at home, if you're watching this, you can be a part of the conversation. The numbers to dial at the bottom of your screen, and we will take your call, which you can pose as a question, a comment to our panel this afternoon, as well as raise your own issues to do with the state of our nation. Mr. Hadebe, so let me pick up with you then. I imagine that you would not differ much from what Jan De Villiers, the DA's Jan De Villiers has said in the last few minutes about progress made on the undertakings under those three main priorities.
Absolutely. Thulasizwe, good afternoon to you and to the viewers at home. Indeed, I would not differ much from my colleague, Jan De Villiers, in that in the Sona 2025, the president highlighted various commitments across governance, economic growth, as you have mentioned, service delivery, energy, and also on the issue of rural development. We are all aware that he mentioned a commitment to drive structural reforms and investment so that South Africa could lift growth to above 3%. And there has been progress in that. We saw a modest uptick in quarterly GDP figures driven by stabilizing energy supply and improved export volumes. And we would also want to say that while the economy remains under pressure, the past year has shown modest improvements, particularly in stabilizing key indicators. Such as removal from the grey list, as my colleague has mentioned, steady interest rates, and steady economic growth. On the issue of revitalizing roads and bridges, we have noted that SANRAL has made some progress on national road corridors, with some upgrades completed or underway on N2s and N3s. People may attest to that, and rural bridges in KZN and the Eastern Cape, the development which we will need for the economy to grow. Port performance improved slightly. Transnet's turnaround interventions saw reduced port backlogs and early improvements in port efficiency. And lastly, the president mentioned undertaking extensive consultation to develop an updated white paper on local government to outline a modern and fit-for-purpose local government system. And there has been some progress in that. the Department of Culture was able to accelerate the long overdue review of the 1998 White Paper on Local Government.
Right.
Excuse me, ensuring that the framework reflects current realities.
All right.
This includes reassessing the funding models for municipalities, the role of traditional leadership in governance, and clear accountability mechanisms.
All right.
For dysfunctional municipalities.
I'll
That
give
was
you-
quite a few.
I'll give you
of
another
the
take,
highlights.
Mr. Hadebe, in just a moment, but I do want to bring in Ms. Mente into the conversation. Ms. Mente, good afternoon. So I imagine that if your two other fellow members of parliament, your colleagues, see the glass as half full, you probably see it as half empty. Am I correct in that assumption?
Thank you very much, Tulas. Thank you for having us. Good afternoon to the viewers at home, and good afternoon to the panel colleagues. No, Tulas, to say we see the glass half full or half empty is an understatement. The entire state has collapsed. There's nothing to be proud about to be in our country. If we want to understand the progress and what the government of today in the GNU is doing for our people, would like to hear successes individually. There are key performance areas for every ministry. If the Minister of Agriculture can name the successes within the department they are leading, if the Minister of Basic Education can name the successes, we have seen how the scholar transport has collapsed in our country. Parents have to cough up money themselves to pay for scholar transport. The state is no longer subsidizing the scholar transport. We must see what is happening in terms of the local government. If we cannot have accountability at local government level, where the Auditor General has given us a very gloomy picture in terms of how the operations of local government have collapsed, it's a very indicative fact that we do not have municipalities, we do not have services, and municipalities are at the cold face of service delivery, where people must be receiving basic service deliveries. Water today. I listened to the Minister of Water in the morning waffling about why people do not have water. Well, I've listened this morning to some MEC talking about scholar transport on TV and telling people stories instead of solutions. These are some of the few things that are basic that any government must get them right. If we can't get account of exactly what is it that has been done, not some high-level information of we've stabilized this, which energy has been stabilized because households do not afford it. The rates of electricity today are skyrocketing, far higher. They are only affordable to people who are working. And those who are working in sustainable jobs, I'm not talking about cashiers, I'm not talking about domestic workers, and today they are not going to even afford gas. So which energy has stabilized? Because it has stabilized for service providers, the people with big pockets. It has not stabilized for a South African who must have access to electricity, who must have lights, for a school in a rural area that must be able to afford electricity in order for education and lessons to continue every day. For children to have access to iPads or tablets, they cannot utilize such. There is no AI in rural areas because there is no electricity. Households do not afford electricity. We stabilized what exactly? If we can get accountability of indication of what individually each department has done in relation to what the president has promised in the last Sona.
Ms. Mente, thank you for that. And in fact, I've got my own questions to the other panelists, which I will pose in the next few minutes. But I do want to let in and speak to Boitumelo in the Free State, one of our viewers who's watching the conversation and has an input to make on it all. Boitumelo, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Please go ahead.
Sir, what I want to just say is that we people on the ground, we are very, very, very tired of promises and promises and promises. We can see what is currently happening in the whole world. For example, the sources of water. It's a big, big problem. The government must not promise, it's time just to implement, because we can no more and more rely on them. We can't trust them. They've taken all our trust, gone now. So what we want to see the president want to talk about is just implement, not promising for things that will be happening about 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, all right.
That's my comment.
All right, thank you for that, Boitumelo. So Boitumelo raising the issue of the trust deficit and saying the time for promises is over. It's time to deliver on those promises that have already been made. Let me ask you, Mr. De Villiers and Mr. Hadebe, a question linked to what Boitumelo was asking, but also linked to what Ms. Mente was saying. Let me start with you, Mr. Hadebe. If an IFP member, supporter, voter were to confront you and say, pinpoint the biggest achievement, the biggest fulfillment of a promise, tangible, that I can point to that says the IFP is now in government and things are beginning to change. What would you point to? We're not talking conceptual issues, not concepts, not the white paper. That's not delivery. That's a concept. What has changed that you can pinpoint and say, this was dysfunctional a year ago, a year later, with the IFP's participation, the president and the government have delivered and it has changed. What would that be for you?
Tulas, I would want to believe that the interest rate is not conceptual. It's a real achievement. Fuel, petrol decrease is not conceptual. You know that with the petrol hike, everything goes up. Petrol goes down, everything goes down. For me and for any South African, I would want to believe that one or two.
It's debatable. I'm sorry for interjecting. Just on the fuel part of things, there are many other factors that are at play, such that you claiming responsibility directly on behalf of the government of national unity may not really tell the full story. So if we were to stick to those things that you yourselves have changed, because you and I know a lot of factors are at play with the fuel price, for example.
Yes, a lot of factors have played in that, but who is on the driving seat? It's the government of national unity. And we must remember that in the government of national unity, it's a collective of political parties. So with all of us together in the driving seat of this government, I confidently claim those achievements, in spite of the fact that there may have been other factors that may have contributed in that. But who was on the driving seat when that was happening? It was the government of national unity.
All right. No, there was a side issue, though. You were still outlining what would be what you would pinpoint to as a measure of success, or was that the entire list for you?
It was not the entire list, Tulas. We do concede to the fact that there are areas still needing improvement. We do concede to that, and we do have a list of things that we would say these are things that we would want to see the president committing in leading this government of national unity to achieve. But there's quite a lot of the things, as we have mentioned earlier when we were opening our account, that although there are quite a number of challenges insofar as water infrastructure is concerned, but I know that my colleague was saying that she heard the minister waffling. But for me, if there are plans that are intended to address the challenges that we have, for me, it's a positive step that to consider that there are challenges, but here are plans on top of the table that the government is committing to implement in order to address the current challenges that we have.
Okay, let me take the same question to Mr. De Villiers. A DA member, supporter, voter confronts you and says, you know, when you were outside in the opposition, you would have been critical of these of the delivery record on the promises from last year. You would not be satisfied with a 1% plus minus economic growth rate. You would not be satisfied with a dysfunctional local government sphere with water not flowing out of taps, what has become a crisis. So with that said, what would you point to that says this is the one measure of success of which we are particularly proud as the DA, having been part of the government of national unity?
Yes, Dilas, thank you. I think it's a cardinal and a very important point, and I agree with you. It doesn't help you just talk about, you know, the big picture stuff and how little things are improving. So I would like to, you know, we're in a coalition government, and in a coalition government, you can only really directly influence the ministries which you have control over and take part in the conversation of the other ministries which you don't have control over. The DA has got 6 ministers, as you well know, and I think if I have to point to hard examples, the first example I have to make is Home Affairs. You know, to us, viewers at home would have called Home Affairs up to now Hell Affairs. It is the place where you went to lose a day of your life, and you were lucky if you were helped in a day. It has always been a place of long queues and frustration, and a real symbolism of a government that is not working for its people. But under Minister Leon Schreiber, we've seen a radical turnaround, and we will soon have one of the best, most modern Home Affairs in the world, because Home Affairs is being digitized. And where South African citizens will in the past have to have queued and taken a day off work to apply for a smart ID, to apply for a passport, they will now be able to use Home Affairs at home, a digital platform from their phone, from their laptop, from their tablet, in their sofa, having a coffee at home, and apply for their digital ID, apply for their passport. So this is real change. This is tangible difference to people's lives. They don't have to take a day off work, put in sick or leave to try and just sort out a passport or an ID or a birth certificate. So this is a real big change. I'd like to just point out Minister Dean McPherson has stopped 6 billion rand of private lease agreements, private tenders that was in the Department of Public Works. That money can now be used to maintain and repair the properties of the state in public works. Minister Gwarube in education has just spent 10 billion rand earmarked for early childhood development, and as well as making sure that we get books in schools and that children that reading is prioritized. On communications, Minister Solly Malatsi has now empowered 3,000 additional government sites. This is clinics and schools and post offices with free Wi-Fi, so that the users, the citizens of this country, can have access to free Wi-Fi when they visit government sites.
Okay, Mr. De Villiers,
I can go on to us, but
let me pause you there. The reason I do that is that I want to give Ms. Mente an opportunity to respond to what you just said. But before I do that, let me take a call from Johannes. Johannes in KZN. Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Yebo sawubona baba.
Yebo baba. Qhubeka baba.
Inkinga esinayo nje yinye engiye ngiyibone ukuthi uhulumeni wethu akanandaba nabantu ababusayo. Phela usibhekeleli yena ngoba wonke umhlaba akawadeliver ama-service. Ukunaloko uvikela abantu abenza ukukhohlakala isikhathi esiningi. Yovumela abantu bangaphandle bagcwalela ngaphakathi benza ukukhohlakala. Kungani uhulumeni ekafuni ukuthembeka kubantu abaphethe ukuze akwazi ngenye ilanga athole ivoti elingambuyisela esithunzi lesi esasetshenzelwa woMandela.
All right. Johannes,
Ngiyabonga baba.
Bonga mina baba. Thank you for calling in. That's Johannes in KZN. Ms. Mente, I imagine that you are nodding. I wasn't seeing you on screen, but I imagine you would have been nodding as the callers were calling in, talking to that issue of the trust deficit. Just your overall then, as we draw towards a close of this conversation, your own expectations for this year's Sona, taking into account the track record we've been discussing in the last while, as well as the inputs of our viewers about their own sense of whether or not they can count on the promises made by government.
No, Tulas, if ever Cyril Ramaphosa is not going to start by giving an account of all the promises that he has given the country before, he might as well not say anything, because Sona are not a new slate of every government. In South Africa, we've been behaving like a Sona is some new slate. We're turning a new page. There is no such. We ought to have accountability and hold everyone accountable. In that, we will then know where we are going. We will then know who's failing. We'll then know who's not implementing the plans of government. We want to understand what is the plan in relation to the economic growth. What is the plan in relation to students who are still out there looking for spaces in the higher education institutions? We have less spaces, we have more children that are passing matric. We want to understand what is the plan in terms of municipalities that cannot operate on their own, that do not have budget. We want to understand what is the plan of the state in ensuring that more budget is going to municipalities in order for them to be capacitated and deliver services for abantu. We want to know what is the plan in terms of creating jobs. EPWP is not jobs. That is a change that none of us on this panel can even utilize. Who gets a 600 rand and call that a salary? Who even came up with such a cruel idea? We want to understand what are the long-term plans to create jobs, to industrialize, food security. Agricultural sector is shutting down. There was recently a video of a frustrated farmer who was addressing the Minister of Agriculture, his deputy and the deputy of land. People want to get land. They want to understand where is the state to fund them in order for them to secure their farms and create jobs in the agro-processing industry.
Right.
We want to understand the regulations that are going to help those small farmers in order for them to be created a shelf space. The state must be able to consume that which our small farmers are producing. We can't have schools that are buying food from God knows where. We can't have correctional services. They are getting food from tenderpreneurs. They are not getting food from the people who are producing food in South Africa. So the state has got a buying power. They must be able to develop our people. They must be able to compensate our people in order for them to create jobs. They must be able to be creative around the tax and everything else. Thank you.
Let me ask the same question in conclusion to Mr. Nhlanhla Hadebe. Your own expectations for Sona 2026.
Plus, perhaps 1 second. I would want to challenge all of us to thoroughly unpack the idea behind the review of the white paper on local government. We all know that the center at which the ball of development and service delivery is kicked off is local government. So you need to review the funding models for you to properly implement the capital projects in local government, to address the issue of having a large sum of money budgeted for new projects and less money budgeted for existing projects, something that gives us this state of dilapidated infrastructure that we have. And coming to your question, we have safety and security, part of our expectations for 2026, strengthen border control and crack down on illegal immigration That is one of our expectations. Ensure rural safety with increased SABC resources, rural patrols, specialized GBF unit, gender-based violence and femicide units. On economy and jobs, we want to hear the president coming up with a clear plan to reduce youth unemployment, support small businesses, and foster industrial growth in rural areas. And we would also want to hear the president talking more about supporting rural farmers and small-scale agriculture as part of sustainable economic development.
Right.
On the issue of water passing, we would want to hear more plans to address rural water scarcity, including investment in water infrastructure, that is your pipes, treatment plants, reservoirs, support for community-based water management initiatives, sustainable approaches for drought mitigation and climate resilience.
All right, Mr. Hadebe.
Improve transport, electricity.
Yeah, I have to come in there. I'm completely out of time. I do apologize because I do need to give Mr. De Villiers the same opportunity. Just your own expectations, Mr. De Villiers. You've got a minute to outline what your expectations are.
Well, very similar to my colleague Veronica, one of the most important things we'd like to see is jobs. We want to see employment. We want to see the economy being turbocharged. And for that, we'd like to see more progress being made on dismantling BEE and making sure that empowerment laws are created that benefit all the people, not just a select few tenderpreneurs. We really want to see some strengthened measures. We need to rescue our ports, our harbors. We'd like to see measures to fight cadre deployment, find ghost workers, lifestyle audits, hold officials responsible so that we can get clean and professional government. We'd like to see strong crime measures, make sure that we devolve policing powers to provincial and local municipal levels where there is capacity to fight crime, so that our government isn't dependent on national government alone. And lastly, we need to see Eskom monopoly broken.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you for your time this afternoon and just weighing in on these conversations and sharing with us some of your own expectations ahead of Sona 2026. That was Jan De Villiers, who is a DA Member of Parliament, also joined by EFF MP Veronica Mente and the IFP's Chief Whip, Nhlanhla Hadebe, in preview of the State of the Nation coming up on Thursday.